Hey, my name is Brian Clark. I created a game called The Subject. I'm working on 2 titles right now, Our Secret Below and Outstation. I also worked on Welcome to the Game 2 and am currently working with Reflect Studios on Welcome to the Game The Recruit. So about a week ago, I put a post on Instagram just asking people what they might want to know about making video games and kind of some of my experiences. And one of the questions I got was, what is the difference between AAA studio work and indie work? And this is actually something I've been asked a lot before, so it seemed like something that was a good starting point to make some videos off of these questions. I got into the industry when I was 20 in 2005. It's been a while. Get off my back. Anyway, I spent a little over 13 years working in AAA at places like my first job was Mythic Entertainment, working on Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning. I've worked for EA, I've worked for Tryon World, I've worked, my last job was at Disney, working with Lucasfilm Games. One of the first things that is kind of misunderstood a lot, or people just don't know, is what AAA actually means. Some people think it's an acronym, or it's normally equated with something like really good graphics and that sort of thing. What AAA actually is just a classification for amount of funding and team size, and really just, if you want to boil it down to its core, how much money is behind a project. That's really about it. You obviously have a lot of managers. There's a whole team breakdown. There's your artists, there's designers, there's engineers, and there's breakdowns of disciplines within those that can be their own teams as well. In a large team at a big company, you're going to have multiple layers of scheduling. There's going to be your creative directors and your producers, and those types are all working on a really high level roadmap with milestones to try and drive a project to completion. They're going to look at something and say, we need to be at this phase at this date, and then we need to be at this phase at this date. It's an overarching aerial view with milestones that sort of march towards an end goal. And then below that, you're going to have your development directors trying to push towards those milestones with a more granular schedule that sort of breaks down, we're going to need these tasks done at this time to be able to reach our milestone. Under your development director types, you're going to have your leads, whether it's engineers, artists, designers, whatever. These are the people that are going to take that schedule and divvy those tasks out to the other team members. And it's sort of left up to the leads then to pack those scheduling requirements into their team. And again, not every studio works this way. Some places are more loose, some places are more tight-knit. This is just kind of a general idea of how that stuff actually clicks together at a big studio. Now, obviously, the big difference there in the indie sphere is you don't have layers upon layers upon layers of management. You have either like a handful of people or even yourself. And for me, where I do everything solo development right now, I schedule everything out. That's the way that I work. And if you look at other videos, that's what I recommend, is really kind of coming up with your game as a whole and then breaking it down to tasks at a high level and then making smaller tasks and tasking yourself with those things. But there is a level of granularity that I ignore just because it's just me. So I know if I need to make something, it's probably going to require this thing, that thing. You kind of get to know yourself and what needs to be scheduled and what needs to just be, what's just kind of a given. This kind of thing obviously leads to a lot more freedom, but it leads to a lot more accountability as well, because if something messes up, it's not something that happens at a high level and says, oh, well, why did we miss this mark? Okay, we can bump that task to the next milestone. Okay, we can retask to a different artist or a different programmer or whatever. Instead, it's very much this like, oh, I did that wrong, and that may have pushed back my launch date, that may have broken something, that may have made it more difficult on myself. One of the things you'll get a lot of in AAA that you don't really see in indie unless the team starts to grow in size, it's just, I believe it's just the nature of having a large team is politics. And that's the sort of things where, you know, you're working on a team and you notice that some manager, some producer, whatever, only really kind of listens to or operates within a certain group that they've sort of formed trust with or friendships with or whatever, and they tend to listen to them more than others, and you've got to kind of push to kind of get certain things through. You can have weird relationships where one manager doesn't like another manager. This is all stuff that's happened at studios that I've been at. One manager doesn't like another manager, and so they kind of are at odds with each other, and it makes things higher tension. It's weird, but at big studios like this, you have this community that you've built around making games, and you're gonna have cliques, you're gonna have friendships with certain people, you're gonna have certain people you like working with more than other people, and so you're gonna be inclined to not listen to somebody or work with someone more than this person over here. It can all become a real goopy mess, and there are studios that I've been at where there's nothing like that, and it's way more professional and things are just super smooth, and there are studios where I've been at where it's incredibly incestuous. I don't want to say it's specific to AAA, but in indie, especially for solo work, I mean, you know, obviously I don't get any of that. The other side to having that community is you work with people you like, you work with people that have common interests, you form friendships, and you get to have sort of that social experience every single day with people that are doing things that you like to do and they like to do too. In the indie space, you don't get a ton of that. Maybe if you're working with a small team of a couple people, you're getting a bit of that social experience, but obviously for, you know, solo development or just a couple people working together remotely, you're not really getting that. The other huge positive to working at a large studio is a paycheck. Obviously, you get steady pay for the work that you do, and you can kind of climb that ladder and get pay increases and new titles and things like that give you that sort of mental boost to that feeling of value as you're working your way up. Back in the indie side of things, you could have no money coming in, or you could have some successful game where suddenly you get a wave of money that'll let you live for a year or two, and you really need to budget accordingly for that stuff, because if you have X amount of money in the bank and you look at it and go, oh well, I could get a new car, or I could do some changes to my house, or buy new furniture for my apartment or something like that, then you're not thinking in the long term, and you're going to have less time to develop games, and that's going to hurt you. You're suddenly going to not have a game out next, and you're going to have no money again. The last thing that I'm going to really talk about is the separation that you have from the project, from the end result as a developer on AAA versus indie, where in the AAA experience, if people are saying things like negative things about your game, if there's toxic people in the community, stuff like that, you have a community team, you have a community manager, you have people specifically meant to deal with that. And if they say this game sucks, they say, well, this company did this thing wrong. You can just take a step back and be like, I just made art for it, or I just did code for it, or I just did this, I just did that. It was, you know, this entire machine working together didn't produce the right project. The further down the ladder you go, the more removed you are from blame, basically. So it's definitely easier to look at communities reacting to your game and going oof, and just hit and minimize and go back to work. Whereas in the indie sphere, it's very, very personal, right? Your game, even in a small team, it's a lot of yourself, and you're out there on Twitter and Instagram and Reddit and all that, and you're like, hey everybody, I really hope you like my game and my experiences, you know, it's like we all are out there sort of putting ourselves out, but it can be really difficult to see people saying something negative, even one, about your game when you've been pouring yourself into it for however long, right? So that's an extra shell of armor that you have to build as an indie developer to be able to separate yourself from the game in the way that you get to separate yourself easily in a studio. So I think that's all I'm going to cover. I mean, you get the idea. I hope at this point, I don't want to make a super long thing. I could talk about all the various differences and all the different experiences for forever. If you want to talk more about that stuff in real time, you can come by the Twitch stream and we can talk more about it there. And as always, thank you guys very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know there's a million channels out there. You could watch anything, but you chose to watch here and stick it out to the end, which is even more amazing. So I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.